Welcome to the World Language School, where learning English is easy, fun, and free. What did you do yesterday? If you're not sure how to say it in English, stay right here. This video will fix that in no time. In our previous videos, you mastered talking about today and tomorrow with the present simple and the present continuous. Now it's time to explore about how to talk about yesterday. The past simple is actually quite easy. Also, did you know that it is the second most common tense that English speakers use? So you see, it's really very important you learn how to use this tense properly. Before we start, however, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell. We're always making new videos and that will help you to improve your English quickly and easily. Your support means the world to us. Thank you. So are you ready? Let's go. Please also watch to the end of the video as there is a fun activity for you to do with the past simple, but you must watch the whole video, otherwise you will not be able to do it. Okay, let's get into this past simple. So first thing to remember is that you can use this tense to tell someone what you did yesterday. But not only, you can also use this tense to tell somebody what happened 100 years ago. So you can use it for a near past or a very distant past. If you are trying to describe what happened at any time before now, you can use the past simple tense. If you talk about an action or an event or a situation that started and ended in any time in the past, so I mean something that happened before now and it is finished, you must use the past simple tense. Easy, right? Now let's look at how to form the past simple. Like its name, it is simple. You simply need to put the subject plus the verb plus ed for regular verbs and for all the subjects. For example, work becomes worked. Snow becomes snowed. Rain becomes rained. Start becomes started. Help, helped. Jump, jumped. Like, liked, and many more. So as you can see from these examples, with most regular verbs, you add ed at the end. But why do I say with most regular verbs? Because when a verb ends in e, we simply add the d. So you don't add ed, you only add d. For example, dance ends with an e, so you don't need to add another e, you just add d. The same thing goes with place, becomes placed. When a verb ends in a consonant and a y, we change the y to I and then add ed. So for example, try, which ends in a y, becomes tried, tried. The same is for worry. You change the y to ied, becomes worried. But remember, if the verb ends in a vowel plus y, then you simply add ed at the end of the verb. So there is no need to change the y to I. For example, play becomes played, so you just add ed at the end. Enjoy becomes enjoyed, ed at the end. Last spelling tip. If you have a consonant and a vowel plus a consonant pattern, you double the last consonant. For example, plan, so you have a consonant, a vowel, and a consonant. You double the N and becomes planned. Stop becomes stopped with a double P. This works for all regular verbs. However, for irregular verbs, the past simple form doesn't follow this rule and it can actually vary or change a lot. Unfortunately, you simply need to learn them by heart. For example, the verb to go in the past simple becomes went. So they don't look the same at all. Or the verb buy becomes bought. The verb speak becomes spoke. Can you think of any others? Which one do you find the most difficult to remember? Write it in the comments below. But the good news is that irregular verbs are the ones we use the most. So where is the good news? Well, if you use them a lot, it will be easier to remember them. So you can find lots of lists and games online that you can use to learn these irregular verbs. But the best way, in my opinion, is to listen and to use them as much as possible. How do we use these verbs in past simple sentences? In positive sentences, the word order is very simple. Subject plus verb. The cool thing about English, unlike other languages and unlike the present simple, is that the form of the verb in the past simple is the same for all subjects. Let me give you an example. I worked in Paris last week. Let's change the subject. You worked in New York last month. He worked in London last summer. She worked in Dubai 2 years ago. We worked in Rome. They worked in Cape Town. Now, as you see, for all subjects, the verb does not change. But as usual, this does not apply to the verb to be, which does its own thing. It is kind of a rebel verb. So you would say, I was happy yesterday. You were hungry last night. She was ill last Monday. We were hungry this morning. They were on holiday last weekend. Now that we have looked at positive sentences, how do you form negatives and questions? Well, to make negative sentences in the past simple, like in the present simple, we use the auxiliary do. But since it is the past, we use the past tense of do, which is irregular, and so it becomes did. So we say did not or didn't plus the base form of the verb. For example, I did not speak, or I didn't speak. She didn't play tennis yesterday. I didn't go to the cinema last weekend. You didn't arrive on time this morning. To make questions in the past simple, the structure is again like in the present simple. So we use the auxiliary do in the past, so did, as in the negative, in front of the subject and the base form of the verb. So the structure is did plus subject plus base form of the verb. For example, did she play tennis yesterday? Did she win the match? Did you go to the cinema last weekend? Okay, so to recap. The past simple is a verb tense used to refer to an action or a series of actions that were completed in the past. You use the past simple tense to talk about things that happened before or existed before now. To talk about a past state of being, or to make clear that something occurred at a specific time in the past. The simple tense of regular verbs is formed by adding ed to the infinitive form of the verb. For example, walk becomes walked. In the past simple tense, negative statements are formed by adding did not, or the contraction didn't, between the subject and the base form of the verb. For example, I didn't walk to work that day. To ask a question in the simple past tense, the formula is did plus subject plus base form of the verb. So understanding the past simple tense makes your speaking and writing clearer, with timelines and sequences of events that are easy to follow. A useful tip to remember is to look for signal words or phrases that often accompany this tense, identifying specifically when in the past the action happened. Let me give you some common examples of these with their definitions. Like in the present simple, also in the past, when we refer to frequency, we use words like often, sometimes, always. For example, I sometimes walked home at lunchtime, or I often brought my lunch to school. We also use words that indicate a definite point in time. For example, last week, or when I was a child, or yesterday, or 6 weeks ago. So for example, we saw a good film last week. Yesterday, I arrived in Paris. She finished her work at 7 o'clock. I went to the theatre last night. And then also an indefinite point in time. For example, the other day, or ages ago, or a long time ago. For example, people lived in caves a long time ago. Or she played the piano when she was a child. Please note that the word ago is a useful way of expressing the distance into the past. It is placed after the period of time. So for example, a week ago, 3 years ago, a minute ago. Okay, so before we end this video, here is a challenge for you. Can you write a mini story in the past simple using these 3 prompts? Wake up, eat pizza, and watch a movie. Write it in the comments below and we will pin the best story. Now, you've mastered talking about today, tomorrow, and yesterday. What's next? Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next surprise. Remember, mastering a language is all about practice and perseverance. So keep watching, keep practicing, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we grow as learners. And remember, as we say in English, practice makes perfect. Thanks for watching and keep practicing your English with us at the World Language School. See you next time.